All right. Hello, everybody. Hope you all are doing well. This is the NBA Tournament Strategy Show where we look at last night's slate, look at what went well, what might not have gone as well. And then on this show, we kind of go game by game, pretty much just kind of theory craft some guys that I'm interested in, some guys I might not like as much. And then on the pre-log show is when the magic happens. We talk about leverage plays, core plays, guys are going under on, and sometimes you get to experience crazy slates like yesterday where my mind's kind of going wild. But pretty much on that show, I just show what I'm doing on a slate. That show is for VIP members only, so feel free to click the link in the description, become a VIP member. Feel free to use the promo code BOB for a 10% discount if you want to. All right, guys, let's jump into last night's slate. Somehow it was positive for me, to be honest. I don't really know how it all came together, but it did. This was the $100,000 winning lineup, which was a super impressive line because you all who were competing for that were facing hundreds of thousands of people, and that's a really hard contest to win. And there were some surprising pieces in here. Luka Doncic made the line somehow. Didn't really see that happening, but he just kind of fit in there. He did enough with 59 points, which happens sometimes. We had some exposure to Doncic. Wasn't really a guy that I forced. I think we were probably around field weight on him, so nothing crazy there. Tyrese Maxey, I was not on. James Harden, I was not on. Jalen Williams, not someone I was super excited about. Gordon Hayward was someone that I had an exposure maximum on. So this is actually a pretty interesting point. So I think I had like a 25, 35%, somewhere between there, an exposure maximum in the domination station percentage. So I limited how much of him I had because I didn't want Gordon Hayward to be the guy who ruined my night. But I was still over the field on him. So, yes, it would have been great if we kept like the 60 to 80% Hayward. The domination station was spot on there. But sometimes if you feel iffy about a guy like I felt about THT yesterday, you can limit it, but still be over the field and have some nice leverage. So it can definitely pan out. Definitely could have been better, but you mitigate the risk that you want to. Kelly Olynyk made it in there. We had some exposure to him, but wasn't excited about it. James Harden wasn't on him. Max Strus was close to a core play. We had plenty of him. And then Onyeka Okongwu came out of nowhere. Bigs against the Hornets. It just kind of pans out more often than it doesn't. He wasn't, that was still a really weird play. He's only 1% owned, but he got there. This was the lineup that was right behind the 100K winning lineup. I thought it was interesting. Mathurin, we had like a 25, 35% exposure maximum on him as well. Limited how much I could have or get hurt by him, especially when we got more news around the Pacers that Halliburton was going to play. Not a guy I was trying to force exposure to, but I still had around 20% exposure. So close to double the field, and it panned out, worked out pretty well. PJ Washington, I was on him last week when all the trades went down earlier than anyone else was, and it worked out, but I kind of forgot about him yesterday. Guy that I want to continue to think about moving forward. We talked about Okongwu. LaMelo Ball was a leverage play. Max Strus was a core play. Damian Lillard was a core play. Damian Lillard, if that game was closer, he really could have showed out a bit more, but kind of slowed down towards the fourth quarter, unfortunately. But all in all, good night. That was the past, though. We can move on. Bill Betts, good to see you, man. Michael Ortiz, it was a great slate. Thanks for your advice. As always, nice. Glad it worked out for you, man. Glad you had some success. Dave said, hit the like button, share and subscribe, please. Agreed. Please do like and subscribe. Always appreciate the support, guys. And then Thomas Dye, good to see you, man. Hope you're doing well. We have a nice 5-gamer today. The theme of today's slate, in my mind, at least from a value perspective, is play the Celtics and Thibault, and outside of that, you can pretty much do whatever else you want to. But let's dig into it. We have the Magic against the Toronto Raptors. Cole Anthony is listed as questionable. Let me refresh to make sure I have the most updated news. Yeah, Cole Anthony is listed as questionable. That matters because Markelle Fultz has really dominated from like an assist rate standpoint and from running the offense standpoint when in general here lately, but it increases if Cole Anthony is out. So Markelle Fultz, as of right now, I'm okay having some exposure to him if the domination station gives me exposure to him. The matchup does concern me a little bit against the Raptors, but I'm more excited to play Fultz if Cole Anthony ends up being out. Outside of that, not my favorite spot, but we've seen Paolo and Wendell Carter Jr. have some flashy nights in spots like this before. Not my favorite spots for them, but they're viable for sure. Outside of that, on a 5-game slate, we'll get some exposure naturally to some of these Magic guys, but there's no one I'm like jumping up and down to play as of right now. Suggs is projecting pretty well. He's definitely someone that is more interesting to me as well if Cole Anthony ends up being out. If Cole Anthony ends up playing, I'm pretty indifferent on it, to be honest. On the Raptors side of things, Gary Trent Jr. is currently listed as questionable. Precious Achiuwa is listed as questionable. Those pieces matter. It's weird because the Magic have actually improved defensively over the last few games. They haven't been allowing as many points in the paint. The sim model likes Pascal Siakam a good bit. 7% ownership. Honestly, I'm more than likely going to have a 15% leverage play on Siakam tonight. That's just going to be the way it is. I don't love it, but he's done well in this matchup in the past. So there's enough going where I can make an argument for it, especially on a 5-game slate. If Precious Achiuwa ends up being out, I have a little bit of more interest in Jakob Poeltl. He's slightly more interesting. Looks like his ownership's going to be decent, so probably still not going to be someone I'm super excited to play, but I'm more open to it if Precious ends up being out. And the reasoning is it should create like more consistent minutes for Poeltl. Still interested in seeing how this relationship and rotations work moving forward for these guys. And then, of course, if Gary Trent Jr. ends up missing time, that's a nice boost to our guy Fred VanVleet and Scotty Barnes as well. So really some interesting pieces here depending on how the news breaks out. But not a game I'm trying to avoid by any means. The Celtics Bucks game, man, the Celtics are missing potentially a lot of guys. Jason Tatum is listed as doubtful. Robert Williams is questionable. Malcolm Brogdon's probable, so he'll probably play. Grant Williams is questionable. And then, of course, Jaylen Brown is still out. Marcus Smart is out. And then Gallinari's been out for a while. So the Celtics are low on guys tonight. So we're going to be playing some of these gross names like Sam Hauser. Robert Williams is out. Al Horford. Derek White is one of my favorite plays on the slate. I like him a lot tonight. Malcolm Brogdon makes a lot of sense too. Peyton Pritchard becomes viable, especially assuming Tatum ends up being out. I like this team. What worries me is the matchup against the Bucks. It's a tough matchup, and the likelihood of this game blowing out, 8.5 point spread, it feels relatively high, to be honest with you guys. It's hard. Like, the only way this game stays close of like if Derek White, Brogdon, or Pritchard really get going. So I like the spot for them. They're all cheap enough where I feel like they can get there in enough time, even if the game does blow out. Whereas like Pritchard is a guy who should play even if this game does become a blowout. You guys know I don't really try to predict blowouts, but sometimes they feel a little bit more likely than others. Andrew said, "Hey, dude, do you think Giannis will score more than 30 points?" To be honest with you, I'm not a really big guy into prop bets and things of that sort. So like my brain doesn't tend to think that way, but I'm working on it. The spread in this game potentially being a blowout does worry me about how likely it is he gets the 30 points. From a DFS standpoint, I am not planning on fading Giannis, but he's also not, at least as of right now, he's not going to be a leverage play for me. So I'm not going to have like 50% Giannis. I plan on probably being around field weight. It wouldn't surprise me if he smashes because the matchup is much softer than it appears to be on paper. But this is a situation where if he was lower owned, I'll be more excited about it. If his ownership falls throughout the slate, then yeah, I'm definitely interested in his upside. But at this ownership, I don't want 50% of them. I prefer like 20 to 30. Let's see. Am I missing anyone? Anything? I don't think so. Um, yeah, for me, it's mostly the Celtics, and from like the Bills' perspective, I'm just gonna kind of let the domination station decide my fate there, and trying to avoid Giannis having too much Giannis, but staying close to field weight. Austin said, "How's Lopez do on blowouts?" He doesn't see a ton of blowout run. But again, I don't try to predict blowouts. That's not how I play. Usually it's the opposite. So, like, if Giannis was low owned, I would be like hammering Giannis tonight. But it's because of his ownership and the blowout why I'm just not as excited to play him. I'm not fading him, but just not my favorite spot. Lopez is an interesting option, though. 6,400, low ownership. He is a more interesting play, especially if guys like Robert Williams end up being out. I'll be more excited to play Brook Lopez, and that's just because the matchup would be softer. So if we get the news that Robert Williams is out, I'll be more interested in Brook Lopez. Al Horford isn't a guy to like laugh at either, but less worried about that, to be honest. Ooh, Austin said, "I love Lopez tonight." Okay, we're thinking close to the same thing. That was a good call out, though, Austin. That was a good one. David said if Robert Williams plays. Yeah, Robert Williams is currently questionable for the Celtics. He's questionable. So we should get that news eventually at some point today, I hope. These are the first two games of the slate, so more than likely we should get it before lock. Kaboom said, Wagwan, happy to see you all. Nice, man. Appreciate you being here. All right. Let's jump into the next game. We have the Kings against the Suns. Malik Monk is already ruled out. KZ Okpala is already ruled out. The Suns have TJ Warren and Darius Bazley listed as available. For the Suns, Warren and Bazley returning makes guys like Ish Wainwright, who we played a little bit last week, and some of the other like fringe plays from the Suns just less interesting for me. The sim model does still have some interest in Ish, but just not my favorite play, to be honest with you guys. Let's dig a little bit deeper here. For the Kings, like I said, they don't have a ton of guys out. So not my favorite spot, to be honest. But again, it's a 5-game slate. So if the domination station likes them, I kind of let the DS do its thing. And then I just try to focus more so on low owned plays that I want to go over on. But let's see if the sim model likes Fox. Okay, viable. Sabonis is probably a little bit tougher. Yeah. So I agree with the sim model. Sabonis isn't a guy that I plan on having a ton of exposure to because I like other centers on the slate more so. But if I have some naturally, that's fine. Just not a situation I'm trying to force exposure to. Uh, Fox is definitely on my radar. I don't know if he'll be a leverage play, but he's someone that I'm comfortable having some exposure to. And then Keegan Murray is also on my radar too as a potential leverage play. Granted, he almost always is. He's a low usage guy, rarely ever does anything. But on a 5-game slate, I'm more willing to take a shot on him. And then Terrence Davis projects well, so he should show up naturally into some of our lines. All right. Andrew said, I also have Derek White over 4.5 assists. Nice. Again, like the props, man, not my thing, but I do like Derek White a lot tonight. Austin Smith said, hold on now. Giroux smashes against a healthy Celtics team. Not bad. Not bad. There are some other point guards I like a little bit more on this slate than Jrue Holiday at 7,600, but we should have some exposure naturally. Not something that I should have to force. Not a guy that I'm trying to like get leverage on. But if we do naturally, I'm fine with it. Skylar said, would you please explain how you will approach this slate, like stars, scrubs, or balance, etc.? To be honest, Skylar, I don't really try and put myself into a box that way. I typically tend to play more stars and scrubs. I'm a MME guy, so I'm typically playing 20 lineups a night or 150 lineups a night. So I tend to focus on finding lower owned or guys that I think are low owned or too low owned and going over on them. And then outside of that, I trust the domination station. I don't try to over tinker. I do tinker. I'm not someone that just lets it do its thing. Like if I don't like someone, I like to know what's going on in the domination station system, which I go over on the pre-lock show. But um, there's a balancing act to it, in my opinion. But in general, there's plenty of value, so should be starts and scrubs if I was making just one line. John Gary said, "Sup Army, love these 1 cent slates on DK. Nice. Wish I knew something about basketball. High scores 344 yesterday. Not bad. Strictly off projected ownership. Nice. Yeah. I mean, for me, when I first started playing NBA DFS after taking a break from a little bit because of a relationship, I knew nothing about a lot of the new guys, and sometimes that helps. Like I had a lot of really big wins not knowing who half the guys were in my line. And like I play a lot of like NASCAR and PGA and esports and all that stuff, and I know nothing about those sports, and I do pretty well. So sometimes it's okay. I do have some interest in the Suns tonight, guys. Ayton is always on my radar. Again, Booker returning hurts him, but I like his upside. The sim model likes him. The ownership is worrying me a little bit, so probably not a leverage play, but someone I want to make sure I have exposure to. For sure. Okogi's a fine value play. Not value, but he's a fine play as well, but not super exciting. I was hoping Ayton and Paul were going to be a little bit lower owned, but they're not. So that's disappointing, to be honest. I do like Ayton tonight, though, but yeah, not as excited as I was once I saw the ownership. That's disappointing. Austin said, "I missed it. Do you think Sabonis and Ayton cancel each other out, or do they go at it?" Sabonis, I'm not super excited about. I like Fox a little bit more, and then Ayton, I like, but his ownership is worrying me. Appreciate it, Skyler. All right. Let's move on. Is this last game? No, second to last game. We're doing pretty well on time, though, so no worries. For the Warriors, we have Klay Thompson listed as TBD, JaMychal Green listed as TBD, Andre Iguodala listed as TBD, Gary Payton's out, and then Stephen Curry's out. The news that matters the most here, which I'm sure is not a surprise to anyone, is if Klay Thompson is going to play or not. If he's out, more than happy to go back to Jordan Poole here. His usage rate increases a ton with Thompson out. His usage rate is already decent with Curry being out over the last few weeks or so. But the matchup does give me some concern. The Clippers are a pretty good defense. Not a team I like to pick on too much. But again, if Thompson's out, I'm more than willing to attack with Poole. For the specific numbers, Poole, when Thompson is out, along with Curry, Poole's usage rate increases by 6.7%. DiVincenzo has the second highest increase with 2.9%. Dramatic gap there. And then Wiggins at 1.9%. So it's tough. The matchup isn't my favorite for these guys. It looks like Looney's projecting well, which is fine. So that means we should get some exposure naturally. Not a situation we have to force. But primarily, I'm focusing on Jordan Poole and hoping Thompson's out. Draymond Green becomes slightly more viable too. For the Clippers, it's not my favorite spot for them, to be honest. They're priced appropriately, at least in my mind. They're also pretty healthy. Eric Gordon is expected to be available. Mason Plumlee is expected to make his first appearance, and Bones Highland is expected to be available. That really could mess up what happens here with some of the guys we've been playing from the Clippers. First of all, Kawhi and Paul George are playing, which is already a dent to Powell. But if Bones Highland actually enters the rotation, that's another ding on Powell and some of the other guards here like Gordon and Mann. So this is a situation I want to see how it plays out. Zubac is someone, and typically this would be a spot where I'm like, yeah, Zubac, I want to have leverage on him against this really bad Golden State Warriors team. But Mason Plumlee should be playing today. And so who knows? Zubac is already a very volatile guy. With Plumlee coming in, that just messes things up even more. And so it's a little tough. I do want to dig a little bit deeper and try to find a spot on this team that I like and want to go over the field on, but this is probably going to be another just kind of trust the domination station spot, unfortunately, just because of all the unknowns and guys joining the team. Let's see. Skylar said, "What is Okogie ownership on both sites?" I only play on DraftKings, so I don't know what, and it's also super early, so ownership means nothing right now. It will change a lot by the time we get closer to lock. But as of right now, we're around 18%. But again, it will change a lot by the time we get to lock. Bobby, good to see you. I appreciate that. That is too kind. That is too kind. John said, "Is he a stud off a dud here?" I missed this when I was talking about it, so I don't know exactly. Oh, you're talking about Poole. Yeah, so that's also I love the stud off a dud narrative. That's something that I usually go for, especially if the ownership is extremely low or projected to be pretty low. Uh the matchup against the Clippers is one I don't like to pick on too much, but if Klay Thompson's out, then I'm much more excited to attack Poole here. I plan on having exposure to Poole. I'm not fading him or anything like that, but just from like a forced leverage play, Jordan Poole would be there for me without a doubt if Klay Thompson ends up getting ruled out. Whereas for now, I'm not really going to force anything here, which is a little bit of a bummer, unfortunately. Bobby said Paul over Leonard or the other way around. If you're picking one. Also, this is another one that could be a blowout that would not shock me at all. Uh, Jordan Poole would have to really lead the way and or Klay Thompson to even keep this game kind of close. But the Clippers are looking like a complete team right now, whereas the Warriors not as much, just because they're injured and hurt. Yeah, I'm honestly pretty indifferent between Leonard and George. Let's see if the sim model has a favorite. Yeah, no, not really. Um, yeah, I mean, if gun to head, I had to pick one. Their ownership's almost exactly the same too. It would be the whoever was the lowest owned, to be honest. Which, as of right now, is Kawhi, but could go either way by the time we hit lock. But I do plan on it having at least a little bit of exposure to both Kawhi and Paul George. Again, on this slate, we have a lot of value, so not really the kind of slate where I like to try and fade studs. So I do plan on at least being around field weight on these guys, just in case one of them are extremely efficient tonight against a really bad Golden State Warriors team. Not the craziest thing that ever happened. All right, y'all. Last game on the slate, we have Washington against Portland. Austin said, "I'm way off track. I'm terribly sorry for this. How does it go against bigs with Washington?" Yeah, Washington, uh, they're not a great rebounding team. They allow a lot of rebounds. We've been attacking Washington with bigs as of here recently, too. I think B-Dubs, one of the other coaches here at DFS Army, really got us onto that one. So, yeah, I'm more than willing to play bigs against the Wizards. But we have Portland against the Wizards. Let's look at injury news. Kyle Kuzma is currently listed as TBD. Uh, Outside of that, they're pretty healthy. For the Trailblazers, we have Jerami Grant listed as TBD. We saw how much that mattered yesterday. If Grant plays, I'm less interested in taking shots on guys like Thibault and Reddish. Of course, if he's out, then I'm totally fine going right back to it. Not right. Well, at least with like Reddish and those guys. Ibu Baji's listed as TBD. Nurkic is out, and then Winslow is out. So I was pretty high on Eubanks yesterday. I don't think that went very well. But I'm willing to go right back to the well here. The ownership, 16%, is a little high, but not enough to scare me from probably having like a 30% min on him as a leverage play. If the ownership goes higher than that, then I probably won't make him a leverage play. But where he is now, I'm fine with. Simons is someone that is really primarily on my radar if Grant ends up being out. If we don't get the news, I'll still have plenty of Simons. If Grant ends up playing, I'm not going to fade Simons, but he's not someone that I want to be over the field on by a lot. Lillard, I'm fine with no matter what. I always like Lillard. Let's see what the sim model thinks. Yeah, it likes Lillard a little bit, as much as you can as a stud. He's on my radar. Was on my radar yesterday. Still like him. Spot's fine. Not really afraid of the Wizards against guards. Porzingis is a guy that I'm not as excited about. Matchup isn't insane, especially with Nurkic and crew out, especially if Grant ends up being out too. The front court matchup just won't be as intense. But Porzingis is never a guy I tend to have a ton of unless the sim model's on him at 9,900. The sim model's not going to be on him. He's just a little too expensive. He's more viable if Kyle Kuzma ended up being out, but in all honesty, not my favorite play. Bradley Beal will be a leverage play for me. He almost always is at this super low ownership. It's really just an ownership play and a sim model play, but the matchup's not awful either. You can play, the matchup isn't bad either, but I'll be over the field on him. Gafford could be interesting. I need to dig a little bit deeper into him. I see there's some models out there that like him a little bit, so I just need to kind of figure out what's going on there. Shaden Sharp is viable, especially if Grant ends up being out. If Grant plays, I'm not on him. And then Matisse Thybulle, super chalk on this slate. More interested, more open and viable play to me if Grant is out. But he's playing consistent minutes, and he played consistent minutes yesterday. We don't know how consistent that's going to be. But if he sees the same kind of minutes he had over the last few games, then I'm totally fine having some exposure to him too as a pretty good value play. And then we talked about Eubanks. Let's see, what's everyone saying? Jimmy Hayes said, so glad they put Kispert back in the fourth quarter. Took down League Tourney last night. Nice, man. Congrats, Jimmy. That's awesome. Austin said he will clean the glass tonight. Yeah. Agreed. Thinking about Eubanks? Yeah, I like Eubanks a good bit. Kaboom said, any love for Watford? To be honest, Watford's just a guy that is never someone I'm super excited to play and or just force exposure on. Looks like he's gonna be relatively popular. If I get exposure naturally in the domination station, I'm fine with it. I'm not gonna take him out of my player pool. There's very few guys I take out of my player pool or that I just kind of list as unplayable. So I'm fine if I get some exposure, but not someone that I'm jumping up and down to play. Jimmy Hayes said won't play him again though. He was bad last night. Yeah. Kispert, not a guy I'm ever really excited to play. But glad he did enough to help you get a takedown. Kaboom said, or seldom shy, shooting Shaden shy. Yeah, Shaden is definitely a more viable play for me if Grant is out. We saw last night, like Lillard, Simons, and Sharp really kind of just took over the offense. So more than willing to do that. But if he plays, I'm not super excited about that. Jimmy Hayes said Lillard every night he plays. Honestly, I'm surprised no one has called me out for that, but I do honestly play Lillard almost every slate he plays. Typically, he's underowned. He's either underowned or in a fantastic spot. If his ownership keeps increasing, though, I'll start to get a little nervous and think about potential pivots, like maybe having more Poole or playing more Fred VanVleet. But at 38%, I'm fine with it. It's more so if he starts to hit like that 40, 42, 45% number, I might start to feel a little uneasy about it. But at least as of right now, I'm fine with having some exposure, preferably in like that 25 to 30% range, but I like him a lot today. Bobby, yeah, you like Beal too. I like it. Avadija, I'm more interested in if Kyle Kuzma is actually out. As of right now, Avadija, assuming Kuzma plays, isn't someone that I'm super high on. But, that doesn't mean you can't play him. Just not someone I'm excited to play. Did Beal get fined last night? I haven't seen anything about that yet. As long as he's not suspended, I'm okay with it. If he did get fined, maybe he has a little bit more of an edge, but I don't know if Beal cares about much of anything these days, so narrative probably isn't there. Peace Frog said everyone seems to be high on Grant for some reason. I mean, I think it's probably because you can play bigs against this Wizards team. And so if you feel uncomfortable with Eubanks, Grant has enough studliness and upside where he could definitely get there. Let's see if the sim model likes him at all. Looks like we have him out as of right now. But if he ends up playing, we'll put him back in there and see what it thinks. Just enough. It's always those guys who just like get that last rebound or that one assist that puts you over in the first place. Like there's nothing like it. Nothing like it. Kaboom said, anyone see when the league fined Cam Thomas after the first game after the trade deadline? This NBA world's getting ridiculous, man. All right, guys. Well, that's everything for me. Just kind of like a quick recap. Like Siakam's on my radar. Have some interest in Ayton and Poole, but there's a lot of injury news that I'll kind of need to be more excited about that. Derek White's probably my favorite play on the slate. And then outside of that, really just waiting on some injury news to make things stand out a little bit more for me. But this is a 5-game slate. I definitely recommend like trying to find some low-owned guys to take some shots on. Kind of my favorite way to play these slates, but wish everyone the best. Look forward to seeing you all on the pre-lock show later today, where we'll have our leverage plays that will be set in stone. Every now and then we have some guys that we kind of go that I find like as we're going game by game, they'll add to the leverage play sheet, but I'll have my leverage play is set, core play is set, and what I'm actually doing on that slate set, as long as we have the news that we have needed. So I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Look forward to seeing y'all later. Peace out.